Review of directed number, extension skills. One of the key skills in directed number for us at the moment is order of operations. A reminder, first you do any sums in brackets. Second, you evaluate any powers. Third, multiply and divide left to right. Fourthly, we add and subtract left to right. When you're doing order of operations, working that supports you to get the right answer is very important. You always keep the whole sum. So here I have 8 divided by 2 times 6. There's no sums in brackets, there's no powers, but there's multiplication and division, so we must do this left to right. That's 8 divided by 2 happens first. That's 4, and you bring down the rest of your sum. 4 times 6. Now there's only one thing left to do. 4 times 6 is 24. Nested brackets, meaning brackets inside brackets. Order of operations says do sums in brackets first, so I look in the brackets first, and then I do order of operations inside that to say do the sum in the brackets first. It is a really good idea to underline what you're doing at each step. Write down everything else exactly as it is, 10 divided by, except when you get to the thing that you've evaluated on this step, you just write it down. So 2 minus 7 is negative 5. Put down the plus 3, the bracket, and the times 3. Now I do the sums in brackets, but there's still order of operations to happen in the brackets. I have to do the division first. Again, I keep these brackets because there's still a sum left to go, equals 10 divided by 5 is negative 2, bring down the plus 3, close the bracket, times 3. I've still got a sum in brackets, so I'm going to do that. Now, because I'm about to finish off what's in the brackets, I don't need the brackets here. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. Now I need the times 3. So you see, I've put that times 3 on every line to say I haven't forgotten you. I'm going to do you. Wait your turn. You're going to get there. 1 times 3 is 3. So perfect working really supports you to get the right answer, and it also supports you to get a lot of marks for credit. If you did a mistake somewhere, if you were doing this negative 2 plus 3 and you accidentally thought that was negative 1 and you wrote negative 1 times 3 and you got negative 3, I could see where you'd gone wrong, and I could see that you'd done everything else perfectly. It's a small mistake. It's not worth losing out on the whole thing. But if all you'd given me is the question and the answer of negative 3, I would have no proof that you knew anything about what you were doing, and I couldn't give you any credit for it. So by showing you're working, you let me see where you've gone wrong and where you've done stuff that was right, and I can give you some marks. The same here. Negative 3 cubed. If you show working and the working's correct, I'll know that you had the right idea, even if you get me the wrong answer. So negative 3 cubed means negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. And this actually gets order of operations. I need to do the first multiplication first. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Bring down this times negative 3 that still gets its turn. 9 times negative 3 is negative 27. So if I saw the working that then you'd glitched out here, I could still see that you knew what cubing was. But if you had a bit of a glitch, like you thought 9 times negative 3, oh, dead easy, that's 18, put it down, and you hadn't done any working, then I've got no evidence that you know what cubing is, so I can't give you any credit for it. But if you've written down the working, I go, hey, this clever kid knows that this means -3 times -3 times -3. Put down your working, because if you make a bit of a mistake, it gives you something to go off when I'm marking it. -4 cubed. That is -4 times -4. And you'll see if I am squaring a negative number, negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 4 is 16. So cubing a negative will get a negative answer. Squaring a negative will get a positive answer. Now this one, just to make sure we've been over it, this is not saying square -5. It's saying square 5 and make it negative. So this, you might want to say, well, I'm just going to put brackets in to support me in knowing that I do this first. That will be -5 times 5. And I need to do the multiplication first because I have to do powers before I do subtraction. 5 times 5 is 25. I want -25. Working supports you in getting the right answer. Problem-solving questions also come up quite a lot. Find a pair of numbers that multiply to give -24 and add to give -10. Now the reasoning that you need to use with these, you need to know the rules about multiplying with negatives. If I do a multiplication of two numbers and I get a negative answer, I know that I must have one positive number and one negative number, because they can't both be negatives, because a negative times a negative wouldn't give me a negative answer. So one of them must be positive and one must be negative. Once you've worked out, okay, I need one positive and one negative, you would be thinking about the factors of 24. What are the pairs of numbers that multiply to give 24? 24 times 1, or 12 times 2, or 8 times 3, or 6 times 4. So it's got to be one of those pairs of numbers, and one of them out of each has to be positive and one has to be negative. So then we look at this information. This pair of numbers adds to give -10. Now if I've got a number plus another number and I get a negative result, and one number was positive and one number was negative, the negative number won. As in it came out on top, it was bigger. So I know that my biggest number in the pair needs to be negative. And so, okay, for each of these, if the biggest number was negative and I added them instead of multiplying, would I get -10? -24 plus 1, no, that's -23. -12 plus 2, that's -10. Do the others work? -8 plus 3, nope, that's -5. -6 plus 4, that's -2. So it's got to be 12 and 2, and the bigger one has to be negative. So my numbers are word question, word answer. The two numbers are -12 and 2. Now, to get full marks on a question like that, you would have to check and show that they do multiply to give -24 and they do add to give 10. So you'd say check, -12 plus 2 is -10, -12 times 2 is -24. So to show that you really do know that they multiply to give -24 and they add to give -10. Sorry, I've got a little bit messy here. Another type of skill in problem solving is working out what we can put as an unknown to make a number sentence true. 6 times something equals -42. Again, it's like this. Use your knowledge of multiplying and dividing with negative numbers. A positive times a what gives me a negative. It's got to be a negative. Then 42 What times 6 would give me 42? Use your number grid if you need to. 6 times 7 is 42, so 6 times negative 7 is negative 42. So there's a bunch of skills, and there's a lot that goes into a really solid set of B grade skills.